So today's video, we're going to talk about twin flames. I'm going to tell you my story up until the point that I know of now, and we're going to keep it short because my story's been going on for 25 years or more, depending on which timeline you are working with. So it's the thing that's going on right now. Everybody is like freaking out about their twin. We have some celestial events happening that are kind of bringing twins together. We did a reading on the twin flame and what's coming, so you guys can all be kept up to date. So if you haven't seen that one, check it out. But you know, I haven't talked about my twin very much, and there's a couple of reasons for that. I've been on this journey so long that I'm very comfortable with where I am right now in life, in self, and in relation to my twin. I've done a lot of work. Obviously, there's still more work to be done, but I understand it a lot better than when I started. So, you know, a lot of you who are in the beginning stages of like freak out, you know, one's a runner, one's a chaser. I'm not there anymore, and that's okay. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to choose my words very carefully, is that everybody has a notion or a label that they want to apply to the whole twin scenario. And I do observe a lot of groups because that's what I do. I don't really talk, but I do observe. And like silly things are going around, like you know, if your life path numbers match up, you know, then you're definitely twins, and if not, like, sucks to be you type of thing. And so I just want to say that those things, you know, take them for what they're worth. If they resonate with you, that's great. If they don't, just leave them, because for years I was told that I am crazy, that it's not really my twin, or it's not really. Like when I think of, I didn't really have a name for the relationship. It was something that didn't have a label when I was working with it or growing up with it. And so people just thought I was crazy, and they thought that, you know, it would come to pass and we'd both go our separate ways, and like it would be done and over with. And people were kind of shocked that like most of my life pretty much revolved around the relationship with my twin, and got me to the point where I am now. And so we don't talk very often anymore. The last big shenanigans that happened separated us into different states, and that's okay. But now, because we're in different states, you know, we used to like hang out together all the time and do all this stuff together and be together. That's what we used to do. But now we're in different states, so it's a little different story, and we've both had to adjust to that. And in the beginning, the adjustment, I think it was very different for both. And I don't want to speak about, you know, his experiences, because I don't, even though I know his experiences, I don't want to pretend to, you know, assume that exactly what he talks about, he should talk about it. If I can ever get him to talk about it, he should talk about it for himself and not have me talk about it for him. But, you know, there was that phone call where he called me one day. I had already moved. To a different town, still in the same state, but a different town, where all of a sudden he was going to like jump states. And he said to me, I feel like I need your permission to move. Like, how do you feel about this? I really need to get out of this state with everything that happened. And I want to remind you that you left first. And so it was just a really bizarre conversation. Like, whoever thinks that, you know, your best friend or second self is going to call you up and say, hey, can I move? What do you think about this? It's just going to take us further away from one another. And, you know, as much as you don't want them to be away from you, what else are you going to say? Because you want the best for them. And so I was like, yeah, of course. Like, we both need to go our separate ways for a while, and like time to just sort everything out. And so But let me start in the beginning because this is crazy. It might get really long. I'm going to try and keep it short. So, there was a time in my life where I I was pretty much done here on Earth. I didn't want to stay. I wanted to go home. I didn't know where home was. I just knew that it wasn't here. I had been taken on my first astral travel that they let me remember, and it was pretty amazing. And they told me that if I could just hang on for just a little bit longer, they were going to send me someone to help me to help me want to stay and help me get through things, and things are going to get better. And so um, I kind of sort of forgot about that portion, but all of a sudden this guy like shows up in my life, right? And I was in high school. I had just started high school, and I had come from a parochial school heading into high school. So my background was very conservative, very it was a huge jump, and anybody who attends religious schools and then has to jump into a public school will know exactly what I mean. It was quite the jump and quite the adjustment, and to top that all off, the obvious feelings of like not feeling like you belong here, like this isn't your home, and like having a hard time relating to everybody and stuff like that. And so out of nowhere, this guy shows up, and he wasn't in high school with me. He actually worked in the theater department. He was in college. We're like 5 years apart. And so he was in college at the time and studying to be a teacher, but in the downtime, he loved theater. And so was working with, and he also loves kids, working with the high school theater. And at 5 years doesn't seem like a lot at all, but when you're in high school, like it's kind of a big deal, right? And so I was the type to, I never was like normal. I mean, I don't know what normal is really, but I was never normal. Boyfriends weren't on my mind. I just wanted to have fun. I wanted to enjoy high school. I felt pretty comfortable in the drama department because you could be yourself, and it was cool because drama people are kind of weird anyway. So when we had met, we hit it off right away, and it was like years ago when you could actually do like cool things with the school. Like we had a lock-in after a show, and we were all sitting around playing Uno. It was just something really weird happened, and I wasn't, this is for me looking back on it, but at the time I recognized that it was weird in a cool way because we were just so compatible. We were just so alike. We were just having the best of time, and it was awesome. And so eventually, we started hanging out with each other, and the drama department was not thrilled with that. And to make it worse, I had my friends like constantly say things like, you guys are going to get married, or you guys, you love each other and you know it. And, and like, that wasn't the case. I mean, like, honestly, we were super awesome, like bestest friends. That's what we were. And it was frustrating when people would keep throwing this at us. And then you have the drama department saying things like, you guys, you shouldn't be hanging out. There was one time where we had another lock-in after a show. They don't do that anymore. But we had another lock-in after a show. And I think he was always the, like one of the adult chaperone people. And eventually because after I left, I went back to work in the theater department as well with the kids, and I became an adult chaperone. But at the time when he was an adult chaperone, I guess like he was watching TV or something, and I fell asleep on his lap. And the head of the drama department walked in, and she was not thrilled, even though, like, honestly, I was only sleeping, right, and he was watching TV, not a big deal. But it kind of was a big deal, I guess, in a really stupid way. But there was certain things too where, like, we were both really awkward. Like, we're not very good at being human, so he doesn't understand this yet. I mean, he does understand it, but he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to bring it full circle. So, like, we we had really odd, because it felt like we knew each other for millennia, for years. Odd things would happen. Like, we were driving just when I, like, had met him. He was taking me to a friend. We were gonna, like, hang out, drama people hang out, and he was driving, and I said something like, I said, like, I'm not really good with relationships, and we should make a bet. Nobody's gonna want to marry me. If I'm like 25 years old and I'm not married yet, let's get married. And in all reality, like, you don't say those things when you don't know a person very well or haven't been with a person for a very long time. But I did. And I didn't know what he was going to say. And he's like, yeah, like, let's get married. That would be awesome. And that really took me by surprise because I wasn't expecting it. Like, we were just friends. But, like, in my mind, friends can get married. Like, but you didn't need any extra components other than, like, best friends. Like, that would be the most awesome relationship. Because I didn't understand, like, sex and sexual things. I just did, like, it just wasn't on my radar, which is weird because you think, like, high school kids nowadays, but it was different, and I'm different, and so there were some really bizarre things that took place as time progressed. Like, I would choose to hang out with him before I would go to prom, type of thing. And I asked him one time, I said, you should come to prom with me. And he's like, yeah, no, that's not going to work because they would not be happy with, like, an adult chaperone there who actually goes with the student. Like, that's not cool. So I said, okay, well, let's not go to prom then. Let's just, like, skip the whole thing and we'll just go hang out in the cemetery. And that's where we hung out. Like, it was just so peaceful. Something really drew us to the cemetery. And I don't know what it really is to this day, other than we were surrounded by a familiarity. Like, we were closed off to the public, so we could be us. We didn't have to try to pretend. And, like, his big thing, I was more open than he was. His big thing was that, like, he always had problems with his feelings. Well, like, he's a guy, so, guys do that. But when we were in the cemetery or when we were alone, like, that was when his soul would really come out and, like, we could actually talk. And it was just so amazing to be able to be with somebody that you feel is your home. And, like, let's be honest, had he not come along, I probably wouldn't be here. I would probably be shot back in somewhere else to finish the missions, but I wouldn't be here. And I don't know if he knows that. I've told him that a few times, but I don't know if he really, like, grasps how important the meeting time was when we met up. Everybody's twin experiences are going to be different. And so just because they're not like mine or mine are completely different, think about what you will. It doesn't really matter. But if yours aren't the same as mine, that is perfectly fine. I wouldn't expect yours to be the same as mine, to be honest. Everybody is just different. Everybody has their own experiences. But for myself, I think you guys need to know that if your twins don't start out as romantic relationships, that's okay. Because to me, that's the ultimate. Like, why would you don't go searching for your twin, right? Your twin finds you. And for us, it was just best friends, like best friends, attached at the hip, doing everything together, being able to communicate telepathically, the only problem, we have a lot of problems, like, don't get me wrong, we have a lot of problems. One of our problems was there was no good way to show love. There was times where we were alone at night, and we would be watching a movie, and like we would be cuddling and we'd fall asleep, and like, he would like wrap his finger around my hair, or like just cuddle me, like kiss my cheek, things like that, and that was it. But like out in public, there's this problem with like showing love, and so a lot of times it was really childish, like a lot of hitting, a lot of just childish ways of showing affection. And there was also times where I would try and like pin him down, and I would say, wait a minute, this is not a normal friendship, and you need to understand this. This is not a normal friendship, and we need to do something about that, because my feelings for you are more than what I would consider a friend. Like, I don't quite understand it, but I do know that, like, my friend over here is completely different than you, and like, you're both guys, and like, and he would always run away from it, though. Like, he was really conflicted. And there was a lot of reasons for that. And I'm going to just call him Raul for now, because it's, we want to keep things private. But so he told me one time that he was confused about his sexuality, and that he didn't understand it because he knew he loved me. And so it shouldn't really matter. And then I told him, because I was really angry, I said, well, I mean, you can't be either or, you can only be one. And like, this was horrible. I should have never said anything. And like, I knew that, but I was just angry. I was so angry because I thought, well, like, I never wanted this to be anything more than just a friendship, but like it turned into that. And now, after you have like obviously shown that you care for me and that you love me in a very deep manner, and now you're going to tell me that you love me, but like you're conflicted against whether I'm a guy or a girl or what's going on. So I was really, really mean, and I should have never said this. And this is what was like the downfall. Like we both have patience problems, but because I said this is what calculated out like the rest of my life. I had said, you can be one or the other, you can't be both. And, because he was older than me, I guess I figured he would just say, well, you're just being crappy and you're angry and like, I know better, But he didn't. Like, he actually took it to heart, and he lived. Well, he probably still lives that way, I guess, because I told him he had to choose, and that was pretty crappy of me. Like we've both done really shitty things to each other, and I didn't realize it at the time. But because like we're not very good at being human, we don't like things that would make sense to any human, normal human, where he could just say, yeah, you're being a dick, and like I can love whoever I want, it doesn't matter. It didn't go so well. So after that, like I left, because I was like, this is ridiculous. You need to get a handle on yourself. You've had this best friend for years, and it's really screwed up any other relationships that you've ever wanted to get in. And that has been the truth. So there was this other guy that I was really interested in at the time, and ironically, they meld together in ways that are unbelievable. So I'm going to call this other guy John. And he was my age. He went to a different high school, and he was different. He was very very, very musical, very, very different. I don't know how to explain it. Like hippie love, different, but like he was cool because like he was really comfortable in self, and he he was artistic and he just went to the beat of his own drum. And because of that, we got along really well together. And I had this feeling with him that I had known him before too, but it was different. It was very, very different. It was like a recognition. It wasn't like a melding, if that makes sense. So there was this little like bizarre tiff between the two. Like Raul would say things to keep me close to him. He didn't want me, like it was very obvious that like he didn't want to progress our friendship relationship further, but he didn't want me to be in the arms of anybody else either. And for whatever reason, now I've had a lot of boyfriends, but whatever reason, this boyfriend or potential boyfriend would just get his goat every time. Every time. The reason for that I understand now from past lives is because they're both Egyptian royalty related. When this information became available to me, I was like floored. I was just absolutely floored. And so I think there was that same vibration there for like the timelines. And so that's what fueled it. So each of them felt really attached, like I was theirs. And there should not be anybody else involved. And so in past lives, I was the mother of Tutankhamun, Akhenaten's son, and then I left right away and came back as Ankhesenamun. And so John was Akhenaten, right? And Raul was Ramses the Great, and I was Queen Nefertari with Ramses the Great. And so if you know anything about the story, you don't know much about the Tutankhamun story because they don't have much information on the mother of Tutankhamun, but she was a harem girl. We talk about this in the past life video, and so you can check it out there. You know, I think if you know anything about the Ramses Nefertari relationship, because there's quite a bit written on it, you know that they were very, very connected and loved each other very much. And so in my high school years, all I could think about was somehow I need to put Raul at a safe distance, because as much as he's a part of me and I completely see us getting married, like I just assumed that we would be getting married. But at the same point, there was another side of me that was the rational side and said, you need to get a hold of this because he doesn't like it when you have other boyfriends, but yet he doesn't want to commit to you. But yet he wants the privileges of like cuddling and kissing and that's supposed to be just best friend stuff. And I wasn't cool with that. I was not cool with that. Like there was a part of me that just wanted to be by him, right? And to just have fun and to just be together. Because when we were together, we were one and we were so powerful, and it was not of this earth. It was not the energy between us, what we were capable of doing. It was beyond everything I had known at that time. And then over here, you have John, who was pretty cool. Like we really enjoyed each other's company. He felt like he could confide in me. I could confide in him, but there was something missing. It just wasn't like Raul, right? But then I rationalized it as you have to be okay with just being friends and coming up with your own boundaries for Raul, because it's never going to work. He's never going to put boundaries on things because he enjoys the connection. He enjoys the closeness. He enjoys the affection. And so it was really hard for me because anytime I was hanging out with Raul, it was like being connected to home, and it was being connected to myself. And so to have this rationalization or this epiphany moment where you needed to separate yourself from the one thing that you love most in this world was a pretty magnificent and heartbreaking moment at the same time. And it wasn't because I wanted to, but it was like because I felt like I had to. Because I really wanted to show him that if he didn't want to come around, like that was cool. I didn't need him, and so um, so I left. I left a couple times, and like a couple times he left, and it was just because like we were at each other's throats. Like I wanted him to be honest with me and just say, we share this really close connection. We act like we're dating, so let's date. I had to, at that point in my life, I had to have a label on it. I had to cement it in stone that this is what normal humans do. Like they have a label for things. If you don't put that label with things, then it's not meaningful or it's not correct or that's not the way it's done. And now I understand that things are a little different, but still, it's good to have that open communication to understand where you both are, because if one's giving and the other one is giving, but you're both giving for different reasons, it doesn't really work, right? And so before I had left for college, I had my best friend. There was a lot of people living at my best friend's home. Her parents were like super awesome. And he, Raul would come over for what we would call as like mystery night, which this is what theater dorks do. Like we cook a really awesome dinner and we watch like the PBS murder mysteries, right? Because that's how cool we are. And there was a person living there, a guy living there at that time, and he was very different. He had never mentioned like girls. All he wanted to do is like talk about cars and computers. I never even thought about it. Like you just naturally introduce the two, and like that night it rains and you go up and like you two are camping in a tent and like you snuggle and you like have these moments where like you wake up and he's staring at you and it's like this uncontrollable like love just radiating, this uncontrollable like feeling of home just radiating, and like you don't think anything of it, that you just introduce these two, right? So I leave for college. I lost contact on purpose because I wanted him to realize that he needs me in his life. I wanted him to realize that I am more to him than just a person to like feel good and to like get cuddles and kisses from. Like I wanted him to feel that longing, that really deep connection that I felt, and for him to come back and say, I'm really sorry. Like I really think we have something amazing and we should be together. And I got on with my life. I actually started dating I had a couple boyfriends in between, but I never told him about any of them because every time I would, he would always disapprove. And so I come back from college, and we're still both working at like the professional theater in town. The guy that I was currently dating was in charge of like the lighting, and like that was his legit job. And like if shows came in, he would make sure the contracts were filled by workers and stuff like that, because we had a lot of professional shows come in from New York, and like singers like Aretha Franklin and Bill Cosby. Well, Bill Cosby's not a singer, but anyway, like I have a lot of stories about stuff like that. But there was this moment where I hadn't seen Raul in a really long time, and it was during a show. I opened the doors, the front of the big theater, which was this really cool, like, massive, vintage, nicely restored theater. And I see him, and he's all, like, dressed up in a suit, right? And he's house managing. And that was the first time we had seen each other in a very, very long time. It was exciting and scary. And he said to me, so what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm here to see Joe. And I knew that I would have to talk with Raul, because he might not let me back there. Like, he might say, well, we're in the middle of a show, and like, I can't really let you go see Joe. And so he said, what are you doing with your life these days? Like, are you done from college, or, what's going on? And like, we were just so happy to see each other. You could totally tell we were both beaming, had these huge smiles on our face. And, I said, well, I'm still in college, but, I'm dating Joe now. And he goes, well, I'm living with the guy that I introduced him to. And I was like, oh, wow. And like, my heart sank. My heart absolutely just like broke in two and just sank. And it was really weird because I never really thought about it before. And I think he only told me that because I brought up the fact that I was going to go see Joe. And I had told Joe about Raul, right? Because all my boyfriends have to know about him, because if they don't, and then like we hang out, they get frustrated or they get upset or they get, one of them told me once, well, he makes you laugh more than you would ever laugh with me, and that's not cool, and why don't you just go date him? And and so he let me up there, and on my way up the steps, because it's a long walk all the way up to the lighting booth, I said, I'm not getting involved with this because it's too heartbreaking. It's just too life-changing, unraveling, unnerving. Raul was the one who first made me search for answers, because we didn't have labels at when this was happening, and the computer, like, internet stuff was just new. And that feeling that this is just more than like a normal relationship, a normal friendship, a normal loving ship. This is just more. And before I knew it, I was hanging out with him like 24/7 again. And so he had his partner that he was like living with, and I was dating Joe. And obviously Joe and Raul knew each other because they both worked at the theater. And I was thinking, like, this could actually work out. Like, he seems happy. I'm making myself happy. And so, like, we can hang out and this is going to be fine. And, like, I have my boundaries now. Except the problem is, when you're together with your twin, at least at that time, it became very apparent that you could have been gone for years with each other, but it doesn't matter. It just picks up where it left off. And so if you left off at a place where you were contemplating relationships and, you were madly in love with each other, and you were fighting because one didn't want to admit it and the other did want to admit it, and it just kind of picks up where it left off. And I didn't know this at the time. This was all stuff that I found out as I was going along. It dawned on me just how serious this was when I had slept over at their place. And like Joe was always at the theater. Joe was always working. And I should have known that this was like really bad. Like, if he liked work more than me type of thing. I should have known this was like really, really bad. But, you live, you learn. So I was sleeping over with them. And, normal people would like sleep on the couch. Well, we were watching a movie, we were all like in bed, because that's what theater people do. Like, we're just all very open, and like friendship, and like, just because you're watching a movie in a bed doesn't mean anything. It just means that you're friends and you're close, and it's not a big deal. All three of us fell asleep in that bed. And I woke up, because I was rolling around, and I woke up and I was like, wow, there's like a lot of room in this bed. I didn't remember. There was like three of us. And I woke up to Raul's arm around me, like tight as you can get, and nobody else in bed. And what had happened was his partner got frustrated because he must have woke up and he must have realized that like Raul was cuddling with me. I was sleeping. I didn't know. And he got up and left someone on the couch. And when I woke up that morning, there was this really weird sense of like power that I had over his, partner, his boyfriend. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, what is this saying? Like, things really haven't changed between us. He obviously just chose me over his partner. And like, it was kind of mind blowing, and it was kind of scary because then it dawned on me, like, could I really ever have a friendship? Just have a friendship and nothing else. And I needed to go blow off some steam. And I had like a high school friend that went to school with in high school that was a couple doors down from their apartment. And so I was chatting with her, and again, I said some really mean things, which I didn't mean. I just had to blow off some steam. And he had been listening by the door, so he wasn't too happy with the things I had said. And it's really silly because you think all this comes about because you're not honest with each other. Like, if you could just be honest with each other, you wouldn't have any of these tiffs because you could just talk to each other and you could be like, oh, like, this is what happened and let's talk about this and this is the way I feel and this is the way I feel and like, but life is never that simple. It doesn't work like that. As things progressed, I had dated Joe for 6 years. So in 6 years' time, Raul and I had been spending, every minute that we could together. Joe was working at the theater, and I loved Joe. Like, don't get me wrong. Like I loved him, but it wasn't in the way that my love for Raul was. Like I always say, like in my journals and stuff, I would always write down that my love for Joe is like the seasons, right? Like time will change it and it will grow. But like my love for Raul would be like the rocks beneath, like unseen but unchangeable, like very Wuthering Heights ish. If you guys are familiar with that, and actually that's kind of how things played out. I didn't even know that the Wuthering Heights existed, and then I saw the black and white movie, and then I read the book, and I was like, oh my god, this is how my life is playing out, and this is absolutely horrible, and I don't know what to do about it. Every single page I turned, I was like, oh my god, this just happened today. Wow. And while I was dating Joe, I worked at the theater a lot. Raul worked at the theater a lot. And like Joe knew that we were very close, and I said, this is how it is. Like, if you want to date me, Raul kind of comes with, like, we're just attached at the hip and you have to be okay with that. And he was, to a certain point, where one day Joe and I were in the car and he was really, 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 really mad at me. And he wouldn't talk to me, and I was like, what's the deal? Like, what, talk to me. And he's like, well, you and Raul, you just think that earthly laws don't apply to you and that you can do whatever you want and it doesn't matter. And I thought to myself for a bit, and I thought, yeah, I do. That is exactly how I feel. And I told him that, and I said, that's how we are, and I can't help it. If I could change things, I would totally change things. And, like, my life would be very simple. But my life is not simple, and you agreed to come along with this, so this is how it is. So you can either accept it or not accept it. But I'm not going to change, because that's how I am. He didn't like that, because he was a Virgo, or he is a Virgo, so he had to always be in charge. And he had to be the one dictating, and if it wasn't like his way, it was no way, right? So he didn't like that at all. And Raul and I continued to be very close. Like there was a lot of times where we would all, because in the Raul and his partner had moved to a new apartment like downtown, so it was very close to the theater. And Joe lived like 15, 20 miles away in a different town. And so instead of Joe always going home to like sleep after the theater was out at 3 a.m. only to be back at 7, he would just go over to Raul's and sleep in the spare room. A lot of times I would sleep there as well, and there was just such, like, it was very problematic for me to sleep, like, knowing Raul was in the next room over. And a lot of times I would lay awake in bed and think, what is he thinking? Like, this is bizarre. And then sometimes I would get up and he would be up at the computer because he couldn't sleep. And then we would go for like walks in the graveyard and stuff. And it was just really nice. It was just that connection. But as close as we were, there was a lot of, like I said, childish ways of showing each other you care. Like we couldn't just say, I love you, I miss you. There was a lot of hitting involved, a lot of pinching. Like you have to understand that I was never very good at being an adult, right? And neither is he. He's still not very good at being an adult. And he has a problem with communicating, and he has a problem with feelings. And so this is like the best way that we knew how to share emotion and love between each other. I mean, like if our significant others weren't there, we would watch a movie and we would like hold hands and we would cuddle and like we were never kissing because like we're together with other people, but the closeness was always there. And it got really bad. It got to the point where we would, if we would all four be watching a movie, we would, he would be with, so like him and I were in the center, and then our significant others were on the other side of us, and we would be holding hands under a blanket. And I just thought, God, how screwed up is my life? Like, the person I'm supposed to marry is sitting right here with me, obviously wanting to pay more attention to me than his significant other. My significant other is working all the time and barely pays attention to me. And we're together, we're here, and yet he doesn't want to come to grips with what's really before him. That there's no other relationship that could compare to what we have. He can't feel the same way with anybody else. He can't connect the same way with anybody else. He just can't. And he doesn't realize that. And if he would just come to me and he would say, hey, you and I belong together. I'm really sorry. Like I screwed up. Let's fix this. I could fix it. Right. And, I waited. I mean, I dated Joe for 8 years, 8 years, maybe more than that. And the night, and I will never forget this, the night that Joe and I came to their apartment, and Raul was standing behind the sink, and I said to him, I said, look, I said, I'm engaged. And I had been crying earlier, like when I was being asked to be engaged. And when, in the moment of my cry, like I couldn't figure out if I was crying because I was happy or if I was crying because I was sad. And that's pretty pathetic. But I knew that this is what people do. Like, I graduated college. This is what I have to do now. I have to settle down and I have to start a family. This is what normal human people do, right? So I told him, he was standing behind the sink, and he didn't say a word to me. The look he gave me just pierced my heart. And I just knew from that moment that he felt so betrayed. That was the worst thing I could possibly do to him, was get engaged. And I was heartbroken. I went home and I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried. I was in a real predicament because I felt like I had to choose. What am I going to do? Am I going to live this life as a single person in the hopes that at some point my other half is going to come around and going to be honest with me and be honest with himself? Or am I going to put that behind me and move on as normal people would? I mean, I didn't have any conception that this was, I knew this was special, like, don't get me wrong. And I knew that there's nobody else that could have that connection with me. And I knew that. But I wasn't going to give in to the fact that there was no other way that I could feel, or that he could feel like that connection with somebody else. I wanted to believe that is just an amazing connection with somebody, because we probably have a lot of past life stuff that we've been together for, but that I can have that with somebody else. All I have to do is find another past life person who we've been together for a long time. I can do that. That's what I didn't want to admit to myself, was that you can come close, but you can't be that that connection is standalone. And so that night, I I cried and I cried and I was trying to rationalize this. And at that point, I came to the realization that I'm not going to give in to him, because if I would give in to him, that would mean that I would be putting my own life on hold, and I wasn't going to do that. And so I was going to do whatever I had to do to make myself happy. And I realized that it wasn't going to be the type of happiness that we could have had together, but that I'm in charge of myself. I'm in charge of my life. And so I'm going to do the best I can. And this seems like a good match. I didn't view it as I'm madly in love with this person. Joe and I are just like meant to be together. No, that's not how I viewed it. I viewed it as he seems like a nice guy. We've been dating for, 8 to 10 years, 6 to 10 years, something like that. And he's only shown me a scary side that I was petrified of once, and he hasn't shown me that again. Other than, he seems like I kind of have to go like with his role, or he gets really angry, but I can bend and I can shape into whatever he wants me to be, because that's what women do. Women don't have a say in things. Women aren't treated equal. Like, this is just how history has been done, and who am I to change it? Like, we get married and then we have kids, and like they do their work thing, and they dictate to us what they want us to do. So I came to the conclusion that he must love me, because we've been dating for a long time, and he did propose. And then I realized that I had told him a couple months ago that we were at this point in our relationship, Joe and I, where something had to happen. Either he had to propose to me, or I was just going to call it off, because nothing was happening. I just felt like it was a stalemate. So I thought, oh crap. So now, like, he's engaged to me because I threatened to end the relationship. Smooth, very smooth. And so I decided, well, if he's ready to get married, I'm ready to get married. I'm ready to like settle down. I'm like substitute teaching. I have my degrees in like history and museum stuff, and I'm in with the museums in this like little town that I lived in. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to have a family, and then I'll probably just become a housewife, and I will be as happy as any housewife usually is. And I thought, I'm going to find a way to do the best that I can do with what I have. And so that was that. And so as things progressed with like planning a wedding, it was very obvious that Joe didn't care. Joe didn't want anything to do with like planning for the wedding. If I would bring it up, he'd get all crabby. If I was actually doing, so the museum that I worked at was going to have a wedding, like Joe and I were going to get married historically in like a German ceremony, because like most of the people in my hometown are German. I was going to have like the real ceremony, and then I was going to have another historical ceremony. So I had like 3 different ceremonies to plan. And I worked at Joann Fabrics at the time, and like these girls would come in and they would be like, oh my God, I'm planning this wedding and it's just so stressful. And I would just look at them and I would think, you're planning one wedding. You don't have your divine counterpart like sitting there on the side getting crabbier as the days go on, not wanting to talk to you about it, but knowing something's up. And then you have your fiance working all the time and doesn't give a rat's ass about you, and yet you're supposed to plan all this stuff and like be calm and cool about it, and you're like bitching because you have one wedding to plan. And so there was moments where I was doing it all by myself. I had an amazing maid of honor. She was helping me out, like the best maid of honor you could ever want. And I stepped into this card store and I was getting stuff. And I had this moment where I looked at these invitations. And these invitations said, today I marry my best friend. And I completely lost it. I completely lost it. Like, I I had to go out into my car and just cry. The whole time I just kept thinking, "Girl, you are in such a hot mess right now." And like, my life was just upside down, and I was supposed to be happy about this, and like, my divine counterpart, he was just getting worse as the days went on, and there was times where, like, we were alone in his apartment, and there was this one time where I was walking down the steps, and because he'll like step into his heart center every once in a while, and you just know, because the whole energy changes. And he was watching a program, and he had reached behind him like to grab my hand, and I that was like one moment that I knew that he had put his ego aside for once. And so I came down, and I like it was actually like a chair like this, and I crawled on his lap, and the moment that he realized that he let his guard down and let his real heart shine through, he like quickly put his hand back, and then it was like really awkward, right? But then I had enough of it, and I said, "This is ridiculous." I said, "I know that you are breaking down one by one, and that you can't. There's something's happening with you, and I want to know what it is, because if you think this is easy for me to do this all by myself with what's going on, you're crazy. And to sit here and know that you and I are the ones that should be getting married, and yet here I am planning this wedding to this guy who like works all the time, who doesn't even care. It's just ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. But I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it because I'm going to move on with my life, because you can't come to terms with yours." That ate at him. That ate at him. And I've always tried to be really honest with him. Like, sometimes my honesty is not in my heart center where it should be, because I get so frustrated. But there was this one day, not shortly after, where we were alone. Well, we were alone. His partner was like downstairs doing video games or something, which he normally was. Like, he always left us alone because he didn't like me. And Raul broke open, and it was like in these tiny whispers, because we were like, I think it was, we were getting something, we were decorating or something. And he said something like, "You don't know all that I contemplate, and with the decisions that I've made in my life." And he just went on and on and on, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, this is amazing," because now I know, like, you'd always second guess yourself, because there was never any honesty there. There was never any true honesty. So you'd always second guess yourself, but now that, like, that your intuition has been right this whole time, and that it's wearing on him, and like, you hate to see him in that pain, because you know what he's going through, because you're going through the same thing, and it's just, the whole thing is just like ludicrous. I never understood it. I never understood why everything was so oxymoronic. It just made no sense to me. It's something that should have been very simple from the beginning. Like, you open your heart to me, I open my heart to you. I'm honest with you. You're honest with me. We're gonna do it together. What's so hard about that? But apparently, like, the twin thing for some people is not easy to navigate. And so it's getting like close to go time with this wedding, right? Um, and as the days passed, I just tried to block off all this. And then I had said to God, I said, "If I'm not supposed to be getting married, send me signs, because I don't know what to do anymore." The parents are in on the wedding, like, you can't just cancel the wedding. Although Joe probably doesn't care, you know. And one sign after another, after another, after another, after another. It got so bad that at one point, a day or so before the wedding, apparently my ring that was ordered months and months before had been lost or something. It wasn't there. And at that point, like, I'm texting Raul, and I'm like, "This is ridiculous. I asked for signs to tell me, like, not to get married, and they're all here. And now I'm stuck, and I don't know what to do." And there was one point before the ring thing where I was working, I had actually just had scheduled with local television programs because we were going to talk about. I was going to do this interview about like the German wedding and stuff, and I get this email into my box. So the email said something like, "You might be mad at me, but I'm not happy about the wedding, and I'll tell you why. Because you and I belong together. We're made of the same soul, and we I don't know, like it should be us getting married, something like that." And I had my boss like sitting on her desk, like right there when I got this email, and I was just shocked. I was just absolutely shocked. I didn't know what to do. Um, I just sat there stunned, and then it finally dawned on me, like get yourself together, close that email because it's like not a work email anyway, and don't cry. Like you need to somehow get your work done, pull yourself together, get your work done so you can leave for the day because you're not going to be any good anymore. And I wrote him one back that said something like you're correct. I It should be us getting married. I've known that ever since I met you, and now we'll probably suffer for it the rest of our lives. That night was going to be the night of the night before the bachelorette party. We were also prepping for the wedding in the theater because that's where else would it be? My maid of honor and I went to stay at their house because it was just right across the street. I couldn't sleep, and he couldn't sleep, and I asked him. I said, if you can bring yourself, let's just spend some time together. And so everybody else went to bed, and like I took his hand and I led him down the steps because there's a lot of steps in the apartment. And I was sitting on the couch and he was at the window, and like there's only been a couple times where he like stands like this, like at the window, watching the moon, and it's dark, and like you just know to leave him alone. And he comes to me like it was just the weirdest thing. It was like it wasn't like human steps coming. It was like he glided. It was just very strange. And like he fell at my feet, and I was sitting on the couch, and he's like, "I'm just so sorry for everything I've done. I know I'm too late, and I don't know what to do about it, and I've loved you my whole life. I love you more than anything. I love you, more than life itself. And I don't know why it took me until now to realize it." And so it was it's like that one thing that you always wish for in your twin relationships. But like when it happens, you wish it would have happened at a different place in the relationship because then you could have actually done something about it, right? And as he knelt by me, because every once in a while I would get past life flashes or past life movies, and oddly enough, like I never got any Egyptian past life ones, but come to find out, like there's a reason for that with him. And so I had this past life movie flash before me of like Victorian, like it was either like in the like 1880s, 1890s, 1900s, so somewhere around there. And I'm sitting on the bed, and I have like really long hair, and it's like kinky from being in a braid. And like he's laying at my feet, like kneeling on my knee, just like he was at that point. And he said the same exact thing, and it was just so weird. I mean, not weird because it happened all the time, but like just weird that at that moment that it would choose to pull a past life. And he was never really one to like get into the past life, and I would attempt to like tell him about, oh, like this past life came up, Like a couple times he was sick, I would wake up in my bed. This is before I was married, and I would see like him or his shadow self in my room, like getting sick, or like I knew he was sick, and then I would the next morning when I'd see him, I'd say, "Hey, were you sick?" I know because I saw, and then. But so we spent that whole night together, crying most of the time, and kissing and just snuggling and like trying to figure out what we're going to do, right? And by this point, you know, that day is supposed to be the bridal shower. Or not the bridal shower. It's supposed to be the bachelorette party. And I'm supposed to be up at 4 o'clock or something, or like 5 o'clock to have this interview about this German wedding. So we talked about running away like together. And there was a couple times during my marriage with Joe where I was close to like showing up at his doorstep and being like, it's time. We're going to either go now or we're not going to do it. And you need to come with me. I never did, of course. Like the couple times I would see him the next day and I'd be like, it was one of those times and I almost showed up and then I thought you wouldn't come with me. And we talked about the possibility of like canceling the wedding. We talked about the possibility of just like switching everything out. Like instead of, you know, Joe and I getting married, like Raul and I getting married. And the biggest thing really that stood in the way of like fixing everything to begin with was that A, the parents had no idea what was going on. You know, B, the parents had paid money into the wedding, and C, they would be really, really, really pissed. And so I wanted to keep the status quo because I used to be really good at keeping the status quo. And I didn't, you know, obviously expect that this was going to happen. And then he told me, he said, well, like we're laying there and cuddling, and he said, well, if we ever got a chance to get together, there would be a lot of this, like laying together and cuddling. And he said, I'm just going to stand up at the wedding then, and I'm just going to say I object, and you're going to come with me, and we're going to leave. And I said, oh my God, I don't know if I have that strength to be able to do that. In the times when I needed to be really strong, I wasn't. And the times when he needed to be really strong, he wasn't. And that's kind of how the whole thing has gone. And so then his partner was getting up for work, right? And like we go up the steps and like he's like, what'd you guys do all night? And we're like, well, what do we normally do? Like we normally like stay up and watch old movies, old black and white movies, and go to the graveyard and, you know, all kinds of crazy, stupid stuff that only we do. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna go to work. And so the partner left, and then like we go upstairs and we crawl in, and I said, I don't want to sleep because I'm gonna wake up and this is gonna be a dream. And I don't want to wake up from this dream. I've waited way too long for this to happen. And he kissed my forehead and he said, this isn't a dream. And when you wake up, I'm still going to be here. And so then, like, I had just fallen asleep. I was exhausted. I was exhausted on every level you could possibly think of exhaustion. And I get this phone call from the museum, and they're like, plans changed. We need you down here, like, right now to do this interview. And I'm like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. And so I woke my maid of honor up, and I'm like, we gotta go. And it was like the hardest thing I'd ever done up until that point, was like, go do something I didn't want to do in the first place. Leave my twin, my divine counterpart, who actually opened himself up to me, and I have all these other like human things I have to take care of. It didn't get better from there. It just got worse because I wasn't ballsy enough to cancel the wedding, and I should have. I should have canceled the wedding, and I didn't. That didn't stop things for us. And so so I had to do the whole honeymoon thing, and I come back, and we all did a camping trip as soon as we were back from the honeymoon. And so Raul and I took a walk, and it was so magnificent. Like, it was on top of a mountain. So we, or big hill, big mountain. We came out like this like Pride Rock kind of thing where like we brought a blanket along and we just kind of laid in each other's arms and we were watching the moon. And we always do well at night, like by the moon and the stars. And I have a story of how when I got the galactic language translated, it told the story of us and how we were, how did that go? A comet that flew through the atmosphere, hit the ground, hit Earth, separated into two, and those two pieces, one of them flew into a statue of Ramses' eyes, and one of them flew into a statue of Nefertari's eyes. And how this whole thing talked about how we have the same heart, the same eyes, the same lips. We're made of the same molecules of the same stardust. And later on, now that I'm able to talk with my galactic family, and I asked about it, and and they said yes, you guys are, and he was sent to you to keep you here because we need you, for your missions. But that he willingly came, and that we know things aren't good with you guys now, but we're really hoping, because we don't want to predict the future, we're really hoping that in some way you guys can come together to at least work, to find a common ground, to be able to work your missions together. So we actually ended up going back, after our lovely moonlight gaze, and like we had our husband and significant other on the other side, and like there we are, like kissing, and things just got kind of crazy after that. Like we didn't care. We absolutely did not care. Like we were, how when it came out that we were having an affair, this one woman who is passed on now, she was very Christian, and when I told her, she said, well, that's a sin and you're going to go to hell and all that stuff. And I thought, who's to say what is it? Who's to say it's a sin in God's eyes? Like, this is the most connected to self, most connected to the universe, most connected to home, most connected to another person I've ever been in my life. This was the right thing to do, the right thing to happen. I should have heeded the don't get married stuff, right? And it was very simple because, like, my husband was gone all the time. Gone. He told me once, he said, you're, in order of importance, my job comes first, my farm comes second, which wasn't even really a farm, like I had some sheep. The house comes third, and you come fourth. And so it was just never, I learned lessons. So, everything happens for a reason. It was just not good to start off with. And this is the downfall of us. My husband threatened me, and threatened my twin. And because at that time I still considered myself, even though I was, searching into myself and studying esoteric ideas and thought processes of other people who have come before, I was still locked in that religious thing. Like, now I'm married, this just came at a really bad time, I have to, like, cut this off. And those moments that I spent with my twin, like the first time that we actually got together, we were camping, of course, and my body, like our bodies actually like flew out and combined in like the ethers or in the universe. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Then, like, when my husband found out about it, he was like shaking me, and he said, "Who do you love more, me or Raul?" And I fainted, and I didn't want to come back to my body because I was up happy with him in his astral. I was happy. I was like, it was all good. And then I realized that I was going to have to come back because I'm in a predicament and I got to finish it. But when I came back, the problem was I couldn't speak. I was like paralyzed. Like, I couldn't speak. I had to remember to how like humans like form their tongue on their mouth to like push words out and what the words were, the vowels. It was just very weird. It was starting from scratch, as like a baby would have to learn to speak. This is where things escalated to the point where they are now with my twin, my divine counterpart, and I didn't want to, but I felt like I had to cut things off. There was a point where it was really cold. I think it was like October or November, and we took this walk by this fountain, and I told him, I said, I don't know what to do. I am threatened. And I'm scared. I'm scared for my life. I don't know. I've seen my ex's Jekyll and Hyde side come out, and I'm afraid. I don't know what to do. I need to just step aside for just a bit until I can figure this out. Like, I want to get away from this marriage. Like, I'm not happy. You know I'm not happy. I would rather be with you. I just don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. And he told me, he said that I'm afraid of losing you now that I found myself. Because if I lose you, the only way I'm going to get through it is to teach myself to hate you. And then I'll have to teach myself that you don't exist. Because it's going to be hard to go back now that I found myself and I found you. I didn't believe him. I mean, because we always get back together. Like, twins always get back together, right? I don't think he had a coat on. And like, we walked and it was really cold. And we were so broken. But, like, we were still able to connect telepathically because that's how we did mostly. Anyway, once we were, when we were both in our heart centers and we were both connected, and we had a really long run that we were connected like that we were actually the two that became one. And we had a really long run, but he turned, I'll never forget this. He turned and he looked down to the river, and I knew exactly what he was thinking. And I said, let's go. It would be cold, but it would be quick. And then we could be together. And we just stopped and we just held each other. And then we walked back to the theater, and my husband came out. And Raul kind of took off running, and he was not happy that I was with Raul. And I said, listen, I'm doing exactly what you want me to. I'm breaking it off, and you need to give me a few minutes with him. And so he left. And I came back to Raul, and he said, so what are we going to do now? And I said, I don't know. I said, just give me some time. I said, I love you more than life. I said, I waited for you, for over whatever, how many years, 12, 14 years. I need you to wait for me for just a bit until I can get this stuff figured out. I don't know how to navigate the husband. I don't know how to navigate the parents. I don't know how to explain any of this to anybody. And he said, why should we have to explain it? We could just leave. And he's right. Like, we could have just left, and it probably would have all blown over. And I said, can I at least walk you home? Because I don't know if I'll be able to see you again. And he said, no, I think it's better if you don't. I need to be alone. And things got bad. Things just got really bad because he was in his own hell. I was in my own hell. There was a point where it was hard because we'd have to see each other at work, at the theater. And we couldn't talk to each other. We couldn't look at each other. It was very, very difficult. And there was this one point where I had snuck outside, and he telepathically received my request for him to come out and meet me. And he said he can't do this. He said it's too hard. He missed me so much, and that he just didn't expect this, that it was going to be this hard. And then I taught at a one-room schoolhouse, so I was going to have his kids, because he was a teacher at that time too. And we were supposed to work on another show together for a high school show, and my husband worked on those shows too. And I said, I just don't think I can do that because I'm not supposed to see you. And every time I see you, I fall apart, and then I have to go through withdrawal all over again. And he was crying, and he kissed my forehead. Like, nobody kisses my forehead anymore, which is probably okay because that's his thing, and I wouldn't want it any other way. But it was really, really bad. We were both getting really skinny. We both liked chocolate cake. We both live in Wisconsin. We're not skinny minis to start off with, right? But he was getting really, really skinny, really, really skinny. I had weird things happen. I had gotten pregnant, and before I had gotten pregnant, I didn't know I had gotten pregnant. It was just this really weird turn of events, and I started having these astral travels with the baby that I was pregnant with, and she was ticked off. She's like, this is not the way it's supposed to be. I had signed the contract to come in, with Raul being my dad, and this is not Raul. And I said, but it's fine. Plans change, free will when you come down here. Like, I'm trying to make the best of it, but you'll like your new dad. He's a really nice guy. You'll totally forget about this when you jump in. It'll be fine. And she's like, no, it's not. So we went back and forth for a couple weeks. She showed me her different ages, her different looks. She was so cute. She had like curly, like carroty, blonde hair, like strawberry blonde hair, like both Raul and I do, and when it's not dyed. But now I'm like getting old, so now it's getting gray and it was turning darker. She's like, no. She's like, I'm not coming in, and I couldn't tell my husband at that time because I thought a baby would save us. A baby would save our relationship. There was days where I couldn't even get out of bed, and like I had to force myself to pretend that I was okay, that nothing was wrong, that I wasn't in hell, that I wasn't dying. And now I was going to have a miscarriage because she didn't want to come in. Couldn't tell my husband. I couldn't tell my twin because we're not supposed to be talking. I think, every once in a while we did like go back and forth, but we would just fight because the only way to show each other that you don't love each other and to try and distance each other is to fight. And so I didn't tell him that I was pregnant. I didn't tell him that I had a miscarriage. I had never been pregnant before, so I didn't know. It turns out like I had like labor pains for days before my husband finally was like, I'm gonna call the nurse now. Like, it's bad enough. I'm gonna call the nurse. See what the nurse says. And the nurse is like, you need to come in. And so something went wrong because they had said that I was just gonna have like a normal miscarriage. Something went wrong, and I ended up in the hospital. And like, it was just really emotional in so many ways. But now that I realize, like, a child is not the answer. A child is not, under any circumstances, going to fix a relationship that is broken to begin with. It's not going to fix you who's broken to begin with. So a child is not the answer. And I think she knew what she was doing, and she knew she was doing it for my better good, too. So it all worked out, but I never told Raul, and all of a sudden I get this text, like, I don't know, weeks later, and he's like, I heard this really strange thing. I heard that you and Joelle were going to have your babies at the same time if you had kept yours, or something bizarre like that. And I had no idea who told him. I really wanted to keep it from him because it was really awkward. Like, how am I supposed to say, you're not going to guess what happened? And like, we're supposed to hate each other, and we're in this really bad place right now because we don't trust each other. We're closed back up. Our keys are tossed out. We're not listening to each other, and we don't want to go back into that heart center for fear that we're going to be heartbroken again. And now I'm supposed to tell you that I was pregnant with this daughter who says she's supposed to be yours, but she didn't want to come in, and then I ended up in the hospital with like this bad miscarriage that, never... So I broke down and I told him some of it. I didn't tell him all of it. And he's like, well, can I talk to you? Can I see you? And I said, I don't know what I would even tell you because this is stuff that you don't understand. This is stuff that you refuse to open your heart up to. It's not going to help you. And of course, because it's him, like I went down to the theater and I saw him and I tried to tell him and it just didn't go very well at all. And so as time progressed, we got distant in a way where he forced himself to forget. He says that he was going to forget everything. I mean, I don't think you really can. I think he wants to think that he did or think that he can push it away, but I think when it comes down to it, because we're still like now we still meet in astral to like do work and stuff like that when we need to, but as things got bad, I would meet with him. There was this one time where I was just beside myself. I was just going to leave. I was just going to drive away. And I didn't. I drove down to the park and I was like, I don't know what to do. And so he came. He like came from the theater. He came. And it was just really nice because it was like a meeting that hadn't happened in so long. And that was the first time we were really alone. And it was really awkward because we didn't want to show each other emotion. And yet we both were so happy to see each other. And I said, if I'm able to make it through this marriage without killing myself or without changing who I am, it's going to be a miracle, because I can't take it right now. You know, I tried so hard to like be the wife that he wanted me to be, and I can't. It's just not who I am. I can't live my life with somebody not loving me. I mean, that's what got me into this whole predicament to begin with. I should have known, because he was never around to begin with when we were dating. So why would things change? And now that we're married, he changed, and he got really angry and very controlling and very scary. And you know, Raul didn't know what to say. He just held me there, and that was enough for that moment. But as time went on, I think he knew that divorce was imminent. So and as things got bad, one day I just left. I had met a couple new friends, and I called one of my new friends up, and I told him, I said, like, I always had more guy friends than girlfriends, so it's hard, like, when I say a friend, like, just a friend, like, you know, girls and I didn't really get along as well as guys and I got along, and I said, I don't know what to do, like, I have nowhere to go, but I'm done, I'm just done. And he said, well, just come, you know, just pack your bags and come, and you just need some time away, and you could think. And so I did. I left. I just left, and it kind of started a whole new life for me, because I realized that he was right. When I could get out there, you know, get away from everybody, get away from the town, I could think a little bit straighter, and it didn't seem so bad. Like, divorce then didn't seem so bad, because I was so miserable and I was so happy, and like this, you know, even though I was completely homeless. Like, I was living on the floor of this guy's house that I had just met, like, not that long ago. And, you know, like, things were the lowest of the low for me. Like, my twin and I really weren't talking. My husband never even came to, like, say, I'll change, or, like, you know, I want you back. Like, he didn't care. And so there was some serious realizations for me, and it came a point where I said, that's it. Like, we're probably going to end up divorcing. Like, you obviously don't care. At that point, my twin did come when I needed him at my side to protect me and help me get my stuff out of the house, out of my ex-husband's house. And there was just some really awkward moments where it was such a loving, protecting energy. He wouldn't even let my ex-husband get near me type of thing, you know? But it wasn't in a, like, I love her, I'm going to run away with her way. It was in a protective love way. It was just, I don't know, it was just very interesting. And so I didn't take very much with me. To start my new life, I didn't take very much with me. And I had told my twin, I had said, if something ever happens to Joe and I, that I would have to leave the city, because I would have to start over. If I can't have a life with you, and then divorcing my ex, who is, like, in the middle of, you and him are in the middle of, like, city stuff, so, like, everybody knows us, I would have to leave. And I don't think he really thought that was going to ever happen. But then when it happened, he was there for me, and, you know, he let me stay at his place with him and his partner. And I would lay awake, like, their bedroom was below me, and I would lay awake at night, and I would just think to myself, here we are again. Like, is he thinking about me? Like, do I say anything? Like, now, when I make a clean break, like, we can get away and we can leave, or do I leave it? Because now he's settled in this life with his partner, and I don't know how much he told his partner of this all, and you know, what do I do? I came to the conclusion that I love him enough that I would let him get on with his life, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, because, you know, then I was finally at a stage where, you know, I could leave, or I could start a life with him, but I was too scared to ask after all that we have put each other through. And there was this moment where we were sitting on the kitchen floor, And he looked at me, and it was a look when his heart was open, and it just pierced my soul, and it was like all this pain and sorrow and this love and just this, I don't even know, like like where everything just comes to a head, and you just think, how can this be possible? Like, I've been through so much already, how much more can I endure? But yet I love you unconditionally type of look, you know. And I could have asked him. I could have asked him there, but I didn't. You know, at that point, then I had already started to have feelings for the guy that the friend that I actually came to my rescue and like let me hang out over there. There was a moment where I had gotten this ring for him, like back when I thought everything was going to work out, and that was going to be our engagement ring, our promise ring. And after we had been so mean to each other, I took it back. Took it back. And then I gave it back to him, and like the look that he gave me when I offered that ring for him just about broke my heart. It was almost like, this is mine, and it's so special to me that I can't even in human words tell you what this means to me. And my new boyfriend. Now, we actually really weren't like boyfriend girlfriend, but like it was a friendship, a best friend relationship that like turned into a boyfriend girlfriend relationship. But we were so poor. He had recently gone through divorce, and his wife took everything. She actually kicked him out. She was an alcoholic and like into drugs. Long story, but he was homeless. I was homeless. I took nothing. I took nothing with me. And then when it came time to clean things out, my parents at that point had come around, and they had rented a garage, so because they didn't want me. I was gonna leave. Like I'm really into like playing piano and stuff, and the piano was kind of like through me. I collected them for a while, and then I found this really amazing like 1930, 1929 count over baby grand. It's so beautiful, and it was like so special to me because it was really how I connected to my counterpart when I was going through times where I was just all by myself for days on end because my husband didn't care and he was working, and I was ready to leave it. I mean, I was ready to leave everything because I didn't have a place for it. And my parents like came around, and they're like, no, like we're gonna get some of your stuff in a place to keep it until you get things figured out. And so we went from being homeless to actually owning our own business and purchasing a house and everything within like 3 years, and being debt free in 3 years. And it's really amazing. It's really amazing how everything has worked out. And my twin is on his own journey. He had called me after I had moved away, and he had said, I think I need to move, but I feel like I have to ask you if I can move. It'd be to Minnesota. And like the very first time he was away ever from me, I got really sick. He went to Ireland with a class to Ireland, and I got really sick. And now, though, that we've been separated, and they were still fighting. I mean, previous to this, we were still fighting every once in a while because I became really in tune to working on myself and my journey and like what that means, and figuring out how everything in this whole divine counterpart, same heart, same soul stuff meld together, and why I don't have times and dates that match up in my journals where, I should only have known him for so many years, but I've known him for longer because it's written in the journal when they don't mix up. And our story, the non-Earth story, is absolutely fascinating. Dealing with working together, jumping timelines. He actually just got back from a jump. And see, the thing is, because we're opposites, I'm very much into soul and divine energy, things like that. Like, I work really close with my galactic families. I know more about him in like the esoteric soul, spirit, past life stuff than he is willing to admit about himself. But he is more of the earth, here now, whatever I can't describe or explain doesn't exist type of thing. And so it's been really hard for us to come together. And when I told him about the whole Ramses thing, there was a moment of recognition, and I eventually sent him something because he hasn't been really talkative on it. And I sent him something and asked him if he was okay that I was telling him this, and he said yes, that this makes a lot of sense. The thing is with him is when I came in, because I was born on a ship, not all my memories were wiped, so it was easier for me to pull my memories out of my soul of who I really am. But he is they just took the word away, so I would have a hard time remembering it. Creator being. And so he got his memory completely wiped. And so it's been challenging to meet both ways now, but yet I think we both understand that we are forever a part of each other. We are each other's selves. And like he still says really ridiculous things. Like when I talked to him maybe a year ago or so, he said he was nervous to like meet up again because we haven't seen each other in a long time and a lot has changed, and that it would just be a little overwhelming. And then he changed and said something to the effect of, but then he would kill me and bury me in his backyard so he could always have me there with him, or something like ridiculous like that. Like he doesn't mean it like literally, Right. So like it's still there. It's just it's a different type of relationship than what it was. We still get together on the astral and do a lot of work together. I'm hoping that we can come to some agreement because our missions are starting, or our second mission is starting, and we actually need to like work together for that. To each his own. He doesn't have to like understand everything I understand, but like the last text I sent to him just recently was he wants to talk about light life topics. Well, his light life topics in the Earth sphere and the 3D sphere are not my light life topics. Like I sent him this picture of my friends were over and we were pulling down wallpaper. Like we do normal human stuff, right? Pull down wallpaper. And her daughter was here, and I took snap pictures, and the whole purpose was to like show him the porch that we're working on. And he sends a thing back that says, "Who's the little one?" Like, heaven forbid I have a kid, right? And I said, well, no, that's like not mine. That's one of my friend's kids. And then it bugged me for days. And so I sent him one that said, I have to let you know that like I'm not having kids. I'm not having Earth kids this time. And I just left it out. I left it at that. And I know because I felt it, like he felt a sign of relief. And so it's really weird because we still have that, but like it's not in the open. Now it's like, it's complicated. But then I said, your light life topics are fine, but your light life topics are not my light life topics. We've both had different life experiences now that we've been separated. So you may want to talk about Earth kids and make sure I don't have Earth kids. But I never mentioned like galactic hybrid children, And like he actually has, like we actually have a galactic hybrid child together, and he doesn't know this. And so I still haven't gotten a response on that. So I hope like his human self is very, very human, and my human self is not very human. So bridging that together has been difficult. And I think, he feels like because we're not physically together or close, or we can just like go for coffee, that it's hard to have that connection, because if we don't work at it, then he feels like it's not as strong, even though he doesn't realize that like we chill out in astral a lot, and so he's just not aware of the other realms or the other ways to do it. And when he pings me, I still get a ping, and then I'm like, really? Like, you really just pinged me? And so it's all been kind of confusing, but I wanted to give you like it's not very short, but my short twin flame divine counterpart story, because everybody's going to be different, and don't feel like you have to stick inside a specific box. Like if you feel that you want to label your person a twin flame, then label that person a twin flame. But just know that it's not easy. It's not an easy relationship. And you learn a lot about yourself in the process of it. And so I'm okay where I am now. And the only thing I could possibly want more would just be a common ground understanding where, like, we could, my divine counterpart and I could work together when we need to work together, talk together, like be like, hey, this is what happened today for you, this is what happened for me, that stuff. But I don't know if that's gonna ever really happen. The last time I checked in with my galactic family, they said they didn't want to tell me the future because the future is so unstable because of free will and jumping timelines, but that they really hoped that we could find some common ground because it's needed. And so I hope this has inspired you. It's the short version, but it is definitely unique. So it's unique to me. And okay, so thanks, and we will talk to you guys later.